Hello, Bible readers. It is Friday, August 20th, and we are reading today it's August 21st. And we are reading from Exodus chapter 31 through 34, and then Matthew chapter 16, the entire chapter, which has two different stories in it. The first thing I'd say about Exodus is, as we think about Sabbath, I know at First Lutheran we've done a lot of work on Sabbath. We read Walter Brueggemann's, it's a very accessible little book, but it is still Brueggemann and his language. He did a book on Sabbath, and I learned a lot about Sabbath from what he had to say about it. This kind of summarizes it. In our contemporary situation, Sabbath is an urgent check on the ideology of productivity, which in turn is rooted in a myth of scarcity, used to justify the great surpluses of the empire. So now there's myth. Myth is used as an explanation. We have a myth of scarcity, that there's only so much, and that if you don't work hard, you won't get in on the very little that there is to have. At one time, for example, it was thought that there wouldn't be enough food to feed 1 billion people on this earth. That was the myth of scarcity. There isn't enough to go around, and so you better work super hard to get what you need. And now, of course, we have, almost 9 billion people? I'm not even sure what the number is right now. And we're able to feed most of us. I think we could feed everybody if we actually figured systems out. And so this myth of scarcity feeds into the ideology of productivity. The state acts as though there's not enough, therefore the supreme virtue is in producing and accumulating more. The ideology of productivity is subtle in its force and variegated in its presence. The most obvious manifestation is the work ethic, whereby one must work harder to achieve more in order to prove one's worth. And this is the other important thing I think about Sabbath. The main point about Sabbath is not worship, and that's how Christians usually talk about it, but the stoppage of work. Such an awareness invites us to rethink the meaning of worship. In this context, worship is God's creation engaged in joyous rest. And then this commentator says, too much worship has become too heavy, too teachy, too insistent, too promotional to be genuine Sabbath. As proposed in Exodus, worship is a place in which to enjoy God. Where do you enjoy God? I think as we read this portion of Exodus, that's what it leads me to wonder. Where do I just enjoy God? There is an enjoyment of God in the way, at least for me, in the ways that we worship at First Lutheran. There's also been an enjoyment of God on the weeks that I haven't been able to be in the worship space, and maybe I'm just with my family. Maybe I'm out in nature. Maybe I'm doing something artistic. There's some Sabbath moments that happen to me as I mow the lawn, or as Carla bakes bread, or I don't know. There's all kinds of possibilities for Sabbath. The book we're reading this summer at First Lutheran is Sanctuary. It's connected, right? Where do you enjoy God? And then there's these really important sections on sin and restoration. This whole golden calf episode is going to teach us a lot about who God is and how God makes atonement and renewal and restoration possible. Israel breaks their side of the covenant. Will God restore the covenant? Will God give up on God's people? And what would it take for God to give up on God's people if this doesn't make God give up on God's people? So those are some of the questions being asked there. And in Matthew really puts a diss on Pharisees and Sadducees. I mean, that first story in Matthew chapter 16, ouch, if you're a Pharisee or Sadducee. And then the Passion prediction, I would just say, this is why many of us, as we think about who Jesus is and what did Jesus know about his own mission on this earth, when he predicts his own death and resurrection and then connects it to what his disciples are going to experience as well, it seems that Jesus is, to some extent, in some, at least awareness, if not even control, of what's happening to him. And that's something we could debate and think about for a very long time. I am one with my God. My God is with us, all of us, at all times and in all places.